Sign it before dessert, or I promise you my son will have his marriage annulled by Monday morning." My mother-in-law's voice was quiet. That was the thing about Eleanor Bennett. She never raised her voice. She didn't need to. She had spent 40 years perfecting the kind of calm that made you feel the floor shifting beneath you. The kind of calm that reminded you exactly how replaceable you were. I looked at the document sitting next to the cranberry sauce. A postnuptial agreement, 14 pages drafted by the most expensive family law attorney in Connecticut, designed to strip me of every marital asset if my husband and I ever divorced. It had been printed on heavy cream stock, the kind of paper that costs more per sheet than most people's lunch. Someone had placed a pen beside it like silverware, like it was part of the place setting. My husband, Michael, sat directly across from me. He was studying his wine glass with the focused attention of a man who had decided the safest thing he could do tonight was become invisible. He wouldn't look at me. He hadn't looked at me since we pulled through the iron gates of his parents' estate 2 hours ago. His father, Richard, sat at the head of the table cutting his turkey with the slow, precise movements of someone who had already won. His sister, Charlotte, was doing that thing she always did, performing a kind of theatrical indifference, examining her manicure while her husband pressed in, quietly refilled his glass, and watched me the way you watch a car accident before it happens. This was Thanksgiving at the Bennett's. This was what I had married into 3 years ago, when I was 28 years old and naive enough to believe that love was an effective armor. Before I tell you what I put on that table instead of my signature and why, 20 minutes later, 2 black SUVs were blocking the driveway. Tell me where you're watching from. Have you ever had to sit at a table full of people who smiled at you while planning your destruction? If you have, stay with me. Because tonight, we're not just eating turkey. Eleanor folded her hands on the tablecloth and looked at me with the particular expression she reserved for things that disappointed. Her contractors who missed deadlines, caterers who misunderstood portion sizes, and me. "Emma," she said, making my name sound like a minor inconvenience. "You're a smart girl. I've always said that about you. You're smart enough to understand what this family represents. The Bennett name opens doors that most people spend entire lifetimes standing outside of. What we're asking isn't unreasonable. It's simply a formality." "A formality?" I repeated. "Michael's grandfather built this family from nothing," Richard said, setting down his fork. "We protect what was built." "That's not personal." "It feels a little personal," I said. Charlotte looked up from her nails. She smiled at me, the specific smile she had been perfecting since the day Michael introduced us. The one that said she found me amusing, the way you find a child's drawing amusing, with affectionate condescension. "No one is attacking you, Emma. We just think that given your background, it's reasonable to have certain protections in place. You came into this family with nothing. We'd simply like clarity on what leaves with you if things don't work out. Your background." Those 2 words had been following me around this house for 3 years. Your background, meaning the small apartment in Akron where I grew up. Your background, meaning the fact that my mother worked at a grocery store and my father had been gone since I was 4. Your background, meaning that I had not been born into a family with a name that opened doors. So clearly I must have married one to get through them. They had never asked what I did, not really, not with genuine curiosity. Michael had told them early on that I ran a small software company, and Eleanor had nodded the way you nod when someone tells you they've taken up watercolor painting. Polite, dismissive. The topic never came up again. To the Bennetts, I was a pretty girl from nowhere who had charmed their son into a wedding, and was now statistically likely to take half his trust fund if the marriage dissolved. They weren't entirely wrong about being strategic. They were just wrong about which one of us was playing chess. "I'm not signing it," I said. The table went still. Michael finally looked up at me. His expression was complicated, part guilt, part warning, part something I recognized as the look of a man who knows he has made a series of bad decisions and is now watching them compound in real time. "Emma," he started. "I'm not signing it," I said again, calmly, the same calm Eleanor used. I had been practicing it. Richard leaned back in his chair. "Then I want you to understand what that means. I have a call scheduled with our attorney at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. We begin the annulment process on grounds of fraudulent misrepresentation. You represented yourself to our family as a woman of modest means who loved our son. If it turns out there were material misrepresentations about your circumstances or intentions, the marriage can be unwound. Fraudulent misrepresentation," I said. "That's an interesting choice of words." Andrew cleared his throat. He was the enforcer, the one they used when they wanted to deliver bad news in the language of reasonableness. He had gone to Yale Law, which he mentioned the way other people mention their eye color as context, as basic fact. Emma, we've done our due diligence. We know your company's last filed revenue. We know what it is, $48,000 last year. He paused. We're not here to humiliate you. We're here to protect the family. I looked at Andrew for a long moment. He had gone to Yale Law. I knew that. I also knew that he had been using Bennett family money to fund a private investment account he hadn't disclosed to Charlotte, that the account held a significant position in a pharmaceutical company currently under SEC investigation, and that he had received the tip from a contact at their accounting firm, which was now, as of 31 days ago, a subsidiary of a company I owned. But I didn't say any of that. Not yet. $48,000, I said. That's what the filing showed. Andrew said, with the satisfaction of a man holding a full house. Polite your phones, I said, and search Villar systems. Nobody moved. Please, I said, and the word was so precise, so controlled, that Charlotte actually reached for her phone before catching herself. Emma, we're not going to, Eleanor started. Villar systems, I said again. VELAR. It's fine. I'll wait. Michael's face had changed. He was looking at me the way he used to look at me in the beginning, before the Bennetts had slowly, patiently worked on him like a current wearing down a stone with wonder, like he had just remembered something about me that the last 3 years had caused him to forget. He picked up his phone. He typed. I watched him read. I watched the color leave his face. What as he started and then stopped. Richard frowned at his son, then picked up his own phone. Eleanor looked at her husband with the expression of a woman who has never needed to look anything up in her life and resented the implication that she should start now. Charlotte typed something and went very still. Andrew's jaw tightened. Northbridge Systems was not the name on my business cards. It was not the name I used in public. It was the parent company, the entities sitting above the entities sitting above the entities that touch the things people could actually see. I had structured it that way deliberately, not to hide, but because when you build something real, you don't need it to be legible to people who aren't looking. The last public valuation of Northbridge Systems, reported in a piece in the Wall Street Journal 14 months ago, was $2.1 billion. The Halloways' total family net worth, including the estate we were sitting in and all of Richard's commercial real estate holdings, was approximately $400 million. I knew this because I had read their financial disclosure during the due diligence process before I allowed one of my subsidiaries to extend them a line of commercial credit 2 years ago. They didn't know the credit had come from me. They knew the name of the bank. They didn't know who owned it. This isn't Richard started. Possible. I offered. You've been running this company since before you married Michael? Eleanor asked. Her voice had not changed. I respected that about her, even now. She was a woman who did not allow herself the luxury of visible shock. I founded Villar when I was 24, I said. The $48,000 on the filing Andrew mentioned belongs to a shell entity I used for administrative purposes. It has nothing to do with the operating company. I picked up the postnuptial agreement and held it for a moment. I understand why you had this drawn up. You thought you were protecting your family. You thought I was someone who had something to gain and nothing to offer. You thought the math was simple. How? Michael said. It wasn't quite a question. It was the sound of a person's model of reality cracking. I didn't lie to you, I said, and I meant it. I had told Michael I had a company. I had told him it was growing. I had told him, on our third date, sitting on the floor of my apartment eating takeout because I hadn't yet bought a couch, that I was going to build something that lasted. He had laughed gently, not cruelly, and said that was very ambitious of me. He had not asked follow-up questions. Neither had his family. That was the thing about the Holloways. They looked at me and saw a category, and categories don't require investigation. So, this is what Charlotte started. You've been hiding this, too? What? Make us look foolish? To prove some kind of point? I haven't been hiding anything, I said. You never asked? There was a silence that sat over the table like weather. And then my mind went somewhere else, the way it does when the walls of a room start to feel familiar for the wrong reasons. I went back 3 years to a dinner almost exactly like this one, 2 weeks after Michael and I got engaged. A welcome dinner. Eleanor had called it. I had worn a dress I couldn't really afford because I wanted to make a good impression, before I understood that the impression had already been made and adjudicated before I walked through the door. After dinner, while Michael was in the other room with his father, Eleanor had pulled me aside into the room she called the library, and she had sat across from me in a wingback chair and said, in that same quiet voice. "I want to be honest with you because I think honesty is a form of respect. Michael is generous. He always has been. He loves easily, and he trusts easily. And those are beautiful qualities in a person, and they are also vulnerabilities. I need you to understand that this family will always protect itself. Whatever your intentions are, and I'll take you at your word that they're sincere, I need you to know that we are watching." I had left that room and sat in the car for 10 minutes before going back inside. I had thought about my mother, who had never once, in my entire life, said anything like that to any person I brought home, who had offered coffee and asked questions and been grateful for whoever made me smile. I had thought about the 7 employees I had at the time, who trusted me to make payroll, who didn't know yet that what we were building was something they would still be talking about in 20 years. I had thought about the girl I had been at 21, sitting in a computer lab at 3 o'clock in the morning, running the same simulation for the 14th time, absolutely certain she was onto something, and absolutely terrified. She was wrong. I had thought, they will not break this. Not this. Whatever else they take from me, they cannot have this. I came back to the table now, to the silence, to Eleanor's face, which had finally shifted not to shock, not to shame, but to a recalculation, the expression of someone updating a spreadsheet. "Well," she said, "there's something else." I said, "And here's where I need to be honest with you, because looking back, I can see that what I did next was not entirely clean. It was not the behavior of someone who had simply risen above it. It was the behavior of someone who had been carefully, deliberately patient for 3 years and had finally decided that patience had reached its expiration date." I reached into my bag and pulled out a manila folder. I set it on the table next to the postnuptial agreement. 18 months ago, I said, your family took out a commercial credit line of $12 million to refinance 3 of the Bennett Group properties. The lending institution was Summit Capital Partners. I looked at Richard. In November of last year, I acquired a controlling interest in Summit Capital, which means, as of that acquisition, I hold the note on your credit line. I opened the folder and slid a single document across the table. The line is in technical default as of 30 days ago. The balloon payment due in December was missed. Not by much, but missed. Richard stood up. "Sit down, Richard," I said, and the surprise of hearing it said that way, quiet, final, made him hesitate long enough that he actually sat back down. "You can't. I'm not calling it," I said. "I want to be very clear about that. I have no interest in destabilizing the Bennett properties. I have no interest in your business. What I have is documentation, and what I want is for everyone at this table to understand what the actual math looks like." I looked at Andrew. "Since we're doing due diligence." Andrew was very still. "The account you've been running through Westbridge Advisory," I said, turning to face him directly, "received material non-public information about Aurelius Pharma's FDA filing timeline. The source of that information was a contact at Redwood Financial. Strickland was acquired by a Villar subsidiary in September. Their internal communications are now subject to our compliance review." I let that sit. I forwarded the relevant files to the SEC's whistleblower division 6 days ago. Charlotte turned to look at her husband. Andrew opened his mouth. Nothing came out. "I want to be clear," I said to the table, "that I did not do any of this tonight. I did not engineer this dinner. I did not arrange for any of this to coincide. You called me here. You put that document next to the cranberry sauce. You chose tonight. I closed the folder. I just came prepared." Eleanor looked at me for a long time. Her face was doing something I had never seen it do before, working. Visibly working. "What do you want?" she finally asked. "I want my husband to look at me," I said. Michael looked up. "I want you to understand," I said to him, "that I am not doing this to hurt you. I am doing this because for 3 years I have sat in this house and let your family define what I was worth to them. And I kept my mouth shut because I thought if I just waited, if I was just patient enough, it would become clear on its own. I thought you would see it. I thought they would." I looked at him steadily. "That document they put in front of me tonight, did you know about it?" He looked down. "Did you know about it?" "They told me it was a formality," he said quietly. "They said it was just to protect the family." I finished. "Yes," I heard. "Emma, I didn't think." "No," I said. "You didn't." There was a sound in the driveway. Tires on gravel, then the heavy metallic sound of vehicle doors. Eleanor turned toward the window. Richard pushed back his chair. 2 sets of headlights were moving up the private road. That would be the federal compliance team. I said. They're not here for dinner. I authorized a voluntary disclosure with the SEC 2 weeks ago regarding Trident. They asked me to be present for the initial interview with the relevant parties. I looked at Andrew. That's you. This is insane, Charlotte said. Her voice was high and tight. You can't do this in someone's home. Andrew can speak with them here, or he can come in voluntarily to their office on Monday, I said. That was the agreement. I advocated for the home option because I thought it would be less disruptive. You're welcome. Andrew was staring at the folder like it might move. I want to say something, I said, standing up. And I want to say it clearly, because I think it's the most important thing that happens at this table tonight. I looked at Eleanor. I don't hate you. I'm not doing this out of hatred. I'm doing this because you handed me a 14-page document and a pen and sign away my rights because you had already decided what I was. And I sat here and I let you finish your turkey and I let you say every word you planned to say because I think if you were going to do it, you should have the chance to do it all the way and I should have the chance to respond all the way. You've made your point, Richard said tightly. I've made a start, I said. The point is this. I never hid from you. You never looked. There's a difference. And the next time you sit across from someone and decide in advance what they are, I'd encourage you to ask one more question before you print 14 pages on heavy cream paper. I picked up my bag. I looked at Michael one more time. I'll be at the Grandview Hotel if you want to talk, I said. Genuinely talk, not Bennett talk. Actual conversation. I buttoned my coat. I'm still your wife. I'd like the chance to figure out if that means something to us independent of all of this. But that's your decision. I walked toward the door. Behind me, I heard the sound of the front doorbell. Heard Richard stand. Heard Eleanor say something in a low, controlled voice that I didn't try to make out. Heard Charlotte say Andrew's name once, sharply, like a question that already knew its answer. I didn't stop walking. Outside, the November air was clean and cold. The kind of cold that wakes you up rather than punishing you. The gravel was loud under my heels. I passed the first black SUV. A man in a dark coat gave me a brief nod. I nodded back. My car was at the end of the circular driveway. I had parked it there deliberately, facing out. When I got in and started the engine, I sat for a moment with hands on the wheel, watching the lights of the estate in the rearview mirror. The windows were bright and gold in the dark, the house enormous and certain of itself, the way houses are when they've been in one family for generations. My phone buzzed. A text from my CFO, Grace. All clear on the Meridian documentation. Also, the WSJ wants a comment on the Trident story. Timeline? I typed back. Monday. And send flowers to the team. They've had a long quarter. I thought about calling my mother. I would call her tomorrow, from somewhere quiet, and she would say something that made the whole thing smaller in the best possible way. She had a gift for that, for making the enormous things manageable without diminishing them. I thought about Michael. Thought about the first time I saw him, at a conference in San Francisco, before I knew who his family was. He had spilled coffee on himself in the hotel lobby and laughed immediately, genuinely, without embarrassment. And I had thought, that's a person who isn't performing. That's someone real. I still believed that was true. I believed it was in there, under the 3 years of Bennett gravity. Whether he could excavate it was not something I could do for him. I put the car in drive. The last thing I saw in my mirror as I pulled through the iron gates was the silhouette of the house against the dark sky, every window lit, and the long, empty driveway behind me. I didn't feel triumphant the way I thought I would. I felt the way you feel at the end of a very long project, the specific exhaustion of having finished something, and the particular lightness that comes after, a kind of stillness. That night, I didn't reclaim a seat at their table. I remembered I had never needed one.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. I truly appreciate your comments, feedback, and thoughts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. See you again in the next stories.